Salutations, President Thabo Mbeki, patron of the Thabo Mbeki Foundation, former President and Chancellor of the University of Dar es Salaam, President Kikwete, Vice Chancellors of the University of Dar es Salaam, Minister of Education, the leadership of UNISA that is here, the chairperson of the Mwalimu Nyerere Foundation, Mzee Butiku, and Bramex. Bramex is the CEO of the Thabo Mbeki Foundation. He has requested me to indicate to all of us that President Mbeki is not delivering the lecture today. The lecture is taking place on Saturday. And today, President Mbeki is going to really interact with the rest of us, in particular the students of Dar es Salaam, which will be preceded obviously by your very insightful questions, comments, to which you want his reaction and that of President Kikwete. We gather here at the University of Dar es Salaam, the University of President Magufuli, Museveni, Kikwete, Mkapa, and many of Africa's finest sons and daughters in science, literature, and the arts. A university whose opening was presided directly by Mwalimu himself in the 1970s. At this moment, he was at pains to mark out the post-colonial academic project. Here in his speech at the opening of the university in August 21 of 1970, Mwalimu canvassed the relevance of Dar es Salaam, the relevance of Dar es Salaam University to African reality and needs, warning against the epistemic culture of mimicry, the academic disease of seeking to emulate Western academic institutions. Mwalimu was clear that this mimicry has nothing, quite frankly, to do with science itself. Meaning one could not say, I'm not going to study artificial intelligence because it was invented in the West. This is contrary to another emphasis he put on reality. In 1966, he argued right here in this campus, speaking to students like we are doing today, that the university must help the nation to face reality. And in our reality, the need for science and scientific training is desperate. Many people today, particularly those who speak about decolonizing the university, miss this point. Often they think decolonization means rejecting science because it is Western. Mwalimu would view such a proposition as dangerous as it is delusional. What is the reality? Industrial development and innovation has entered an interesting stage of machine learning, generative AI, nanotechnology, cyber, physical systems, Internet of Things, and cloud computing in what is now known as the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Meaning these developments are at an industrial scale and defining industrial production. On the 5th of February this year, CNBC International Podcast published a podcast by Professor Max Tegmark, a Swedish-American physicist at MIT, who argued that AI is posing an existential threat to humanity. He speaks of the supersonic speed with which machines are close to attaining autonomous, intelligent capabilities, and soon humans will lose control over them. This loss of control means these intelligent systems can take decisions on their own that we often cannot immediately comprehend and that may be harmful to populations. He calls for complete deregulation, in fact, regulation at global scale and complete ban on companies developing these systems on their own. In some scientific tackles, you will know, scientists have argued that the threat posed by artificial intelligence is worse than that was posed by the hydrogen and atomic bombs, because these bombs still need a human intervention. Self-generating machines with autonomous intelligent capabilities far surpass human understanding and are reaching self-automation and self-control. What Mwalimu will never agree with is an academic project that would claim oblivion or seek to go on with life as if such developments do not affect us or they have not happened. For such an academic project would not be in keeping with his call that universities must be, and I quote, committed to the pursuit of truth. Mwalimu calls for the fast-tracking of the training in science because in his mind, science is a legitimate instrument of production of reliable knowledge upon which human development, solutions, and innovations can be based. It is therefore not Western in and of itself. In fact, its entire evolution up to the modern standard model principle physics, it is global, with some key developmental stages historically taking place in the continent of Africa by Africans. Mwalimu would insist that we are part of the world and must never accept to be sent to the villages to live the rest of our desperate lives in primitive conditions, only to be admired by tourists for how traditional we have been and remained despite supersonic high-tech human civilizations. Part of nature and the natural human kingdom. Mwalimu knew that the universality of science cannot be domesticated by racism, which drove the colonial project. Colonization was driven by a lie, which got sustained through genocide, massacres, plunder, and systemic socio-economic zombification of Africans, the cultural domification of the continent. The liberation project was therefore an equally violent confrontation in defense of Africa against a lie. No one must live in the dictates of a lie that we are not part of the world, that we are not part of the scientific endeavor. We must unapologetically be part of the universal scientific experience and do so on the terms that we set ourselves. Mwalimu's challenge to the post-colonial university is that the agenda that must employ science should not mimic the West, meaning it must be based on solving problems facing the continent and its people. And in that year, he was emphasizing agriculture. A more central proposition he put in that very year relates to the question of self-reliance, also articulated elsewhere in his works on education as self-reliance. His central struggle, which remains our struggle today, is that Africa, or is often Africa that thinks for itself, that is able to stand as an equal partner amongst the people of the world. That it must be part of the world is non-negotiable. An Africa capable of leading its own development, governing itself in total peace and stability. Our duty in gathering tonight is to rise to Mwalimu's challenge, which is the central tenet of African Renaissance, of the African Renaissance project. To renew Africa, first and foremost, is to accept the inevitable, eternal, and urgent truth. No one is coming to save this continent. Africans, you are on your own. We are on our own. Self-reliance is the ability to depend on ourselves for the needs like food, shelter, and economic stability without external aid. African Renaissance means Africans taking control of their resources, decisions, and development. At this moment, Africa is totally reliant for this sustenance on other peoples of the world. Meaning for at least the past 50 years, In some post-colonial dispensations, we are speaking about much more. We have volunteered ourselves, our destiny, our future to others in the world, which is the greatest form of self-damification in the whole world. After 50 years of independence, here in Tanzania, it has been over 60 years. What justification do we still have to blame the West and former colonizers for our underdevelopment? How come we find it easy to steal from each other, even money meant for medication, for the sickly, to arrest and imprison each other over ideas, kill each other over ethnic differences? Yet we do not have the same determination to solve the economic problems that face us. How come we don't mobilize the West in the economic distribution of self-hate and self-division amongst each other? And yet when it comes to the positive development and the resolution of poverty, inequality, industrialization, our leaders have the audacity to say it is the West that is holding their hands and feet from developing our communities. Yet we do not have the same determination as well for a self-reliant Africa in mining, manufacturing, communication, digital technologies, infrastructure, healthcare, and education. We know that Africa relies on imports for many consumer goods, with only 20% of food imports coming from other countries. For manufactured goods, the continent produces just 2%. Suggesting low share of locally consumed products are made in Africa. Less than 2% of our medicines do not come from the continent, meaning close to 90% of our pharmaceutical products come from outside of the continent. 80% of antiretrovirals being imported mostly from Europe, India, and China. This means we cannot heal ourselves. We cannot clothe ourselves. We cannot even drive ourselves. All the cars that we used coming here are not produced in the continent. We have wars in at least each of the regions of the continent. Yet well over 90% of those guns and ammunitions don't come from this continent. And out of the destruction of our lives is the profiteering of the international military-industrial complex based elsewhere. We don't even have the means to kill ourselves. But killing we are doing. President Mbeki has been at pains to also explain to us that even in thieving, the majority of the thieving in the population is not local thieves here in Africa. Through illicit financial outflows, you are even outdone in thieving by the Western thieves in Europe as well as North America. I'm not saying that we must compete in criminality. Our call here, therefore, today is a simple one. The genesis of our freedom is we must be responsible for ourselves. This is the true meaning of liberation. This is the true meaning of freedom. The capacity to be responsible for ourselves. So why are we here today? We are here to start a rebellion. We are here to repeat after Mwalimu that education is not a way of escaping poverty. It is not a way of escaping the country's poverty. It is a way of fighting against poverty. We are here to remind Tanzania of Mwalimu's development as rebellion. Your education here in these lecture halls must lead you to rebel against the spirit of mimicry of the West, the spirit of plunder and of war. The intellectual academic project must employ the scientific tools, not in pursuit of Western questions and problems, but it must employ scientific tools to answer the questions of Tanzania, of Zambia, of Uganda, of the DRC, and the rest of the diaspora. We must fight against every obstacle, regardless of who puts that obstacle. Even if that obstacle is put by ourselves, each and every obstacle that denies us to be responsible for our freedom, to be responsible for our destiny, to account for ourselves, it must be crushed once and for all. This is the quintessential call for Africa's renewal. It is a revival of some pride. You must refuse to live in the conditions in which you cannot be proud of yourself. The people who steal in this continent, the people who steal the resources of this continent, the people who self-enrich out of government money are low self-esteem driven, mimic driven, zombies who are looking out to become part of the Western culture of consumerism. If we are going to be proud of this continent, first things first, I want to belong to a street that I love. I want to belong to a college that I can be proud of. That when I'm in Europe and they try to look down on me, I don't think twice because I've got a home to go to, and that home is a home to be proud of. The radical need to live in peace, stability, and prosperity. The refusal to be led by anyone who violates this eternal idea that we must be self-reliant. That's the call today. That we must create the conditions to rely on ourselves, to clothe ourselves, to feed ourselves, to transport and heal and educate ourselves. Such a spirit in this continent must be brave to embrace the difficult work of African unity. Over the last few decades, our continent has fractured. And the best example is the Trump war, in which the African continent couldn't constitute an agenda in a united form to say, not in our name. You're not going to bully anyone from Cape to Cairo, regardless of whether you are running the most powerful country and military in the world. We are going to die together because we have lived together, we were oppressed together, we are hated together. You come to us as a united force, as Africans in the world. We must refuse all efforts to turn Africa against each other. Anybody that turns an African against each other is not part of us. Anyone who wants to do business with us must respect this objective, that we want to be self-reliant. If you want to get our gold, whether you are China, India, Brazil, the United States, or Europe, you must respect this important principle that we want to be self-reliant. So if you want to take our gold, if you want an exchange of our gold, you must know that you will have to come with a trade deal that allows us to attain self-reliance in the entire gold chain, the chain in the gold trade. If you want our rare earth minerals, you must give us a trade deal that allows us to empower local manufacturing of digital technologies, including building high-speed internet in universities and public facilities. A university must be a place of the fastest internet on earth, everywhere, anytime. There must be internet everywhere. In the bedroom, in the dormitories, in the canteen, because learning is like a spirit. It can awake anytime. And when it awakes and that fire comes, you must be able to tap into the universal portal of knowledge and science. Here, in this hall, we must reignite the spirit of commitment to this continent. We must live here knowing that there is no European President Mbeki, there is no American, there is no China that will ever liberate this continent. They cannot do it. They are not Africans. How could they know what Africans need? It is Africans who must set the agenda, live to the best standards of that agenda in as powerful a way that is so self-sacrificial. Only Africans can define that agenda, not China, not Europe, not India. You, here, right now, are the Africa that we need. You, here, right now, are the person that we are here to reignite. You, here, right now, must be responsible for the renewal of this continent. You, here, right now, must make sure that Tanzania is a place to be proud of. You, here, right now, are responsible for reigniting African Renaissance. Forward with self-reliance, forward with Africa's renewal. Asante sana.
This is News Live SA.